So, we're talking today about electoral reform. And I think we've talked about Compass before. I can't remember. But if we haven't, just in case I'm forgetting or anything like that, what is Compass? Compass is the one of the new organizations to pop up, which is trying to lead the campaign to reform politics, to make it more fairer. One of the things they're pushing for is for proportional representation. Great, that's what we push for as well. And of course, the leader, I think, I can't remember if he's the head of the group or when he's one of their leader campaigners, Neil Lawson, sorry, has written a very good piece in The Guardian about what Labour needs to do to, well, at least to embrace electoral reform. We've said it before. The campaign to go and to push for electoral reform is really, really needed. Really needed. You know, we need to reform our system desperately, and it's not just as we've said before. Westminster sorting out how MPs get elected into sort of Westminster, but it's also, as we've said and talked about quite a lot, reforming the House of Lords. And I've said multiple times, if Labour gets in and it gets in a big way, then we've got to certainly push for House of Lords reform. We cannot just let it, slip by the wayside. And the thing is, if there is going to be a snap general election this year, which potentially a lot of people are saying is very likely could happen, and to be honest, I agree with them. I very, very much in the camp there could be a snap general election this year. I think this could not only be a big potential vote winner, I think this could certainly help restore a lot of people's faith in politics by bringing back as we've said, reform the House of Lords into a House of Regional Representatives put in by PR. And I've said the campaign groups that want PR should be battering their way down to Gordon Brown's and Keir Starmer's door, saying we've got the answer, because I think it was the Electoral Reform Society. I can't remember who did it, but it was like a couple of years ago now. I can't remember which campaign group did it, but there was a campaign group and they actually had a full document about what PR would do and how like a House of regional representation would look like in the UK if we were to place the House of Lords with it, what it would look like, what it would do, how it would all be laid out. So that document still exists out there. I'm pretty sure it still exists out there. And that would be a perfect mold to follow should Labour want to, renew and to sort of reform the House of Lords. But today we're going to go into this because I think there's a lot of, again, good arguments for why Labour needs to get behind it and why it needs to back changing our electoral system. So, before we go diving into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and an automation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, there is the YouTube thank you button and, of course, the Pony Club down below as well. And, of course, remember, if you are a member of the Pony Club or you are on Patreon, like I say, I do my weekly video for you guys. So that is out today. Yes, I'll be doing one probably later today. Let's say, as always, guys, thank you very much to all your support. Please remember to ring the bell as well, because it lets you know when we drop a new video or when we go live as well. So, as always, guys, thank you very much for all the support you show, and on with today's piece. So, this comes from The Guardian, the title of "There's no point Labour winning unless it promises to dismantle our toxic electoral system." So, as the Tories flatline, two big questions must prey on Keir Starmer's mind. Can he win? And will a government that he leads really change British society? And those are really two big questions. I will not lie. Those are really two big questions, because we have seen before what happened to Theresa May, where she was seeing massive poll leads. And of course, we all know what happened in that election after saying, I'm not going to call a general election. I'm not going to call one at all. Oh, look, I'm calling a general election because the polls say that I would absolutely win in a landslide. And of course, that's not what happened. Of course, we all know what happened to Theresa May. So we have to be very, very careful. Or at least Starmer must be very, very cautious not to take the next general election for granted that he's just going to win automatically. That could lead to, I think, a lot of missteps in a potential general election campaign. But back to it. So, according to one way of thinking, these are the unconnected dilemmas. Labour just needs to get over the line and then only worry about what needs to be done. But the means and ends can never be separated. How Starmer wins will shape how he governs. In our very tumultuous times, winning office is necessary but not sufficient. Winning the power to act in big ways over a long time is essential. So how can the Labour leader both win and be prepared for what comes next? And that's very true as well. It's not just winning, it's about what comes next. You're in power now. What are you going to do? How does your win shape you? How many MPs do you have? And if we are to take this view that we've seen in the polls of this very, very big Labour win, went over recently about what's been dubbed the red tidal wave in all the coastal seats, all switching to potentially Labour. That is potentially massive if that does happen. But again, we've all seen polls before not go, shall we say, the right way we would all be hoping for when it comes to election night. So something to bear in mind. So Labour's lead hovers at about 20%. But remember that under our first past the post electoral system, where it's spread of the support across the country that counts. Very true. Labour needs a lead of 12% for any parliamentary majority. And historically, the trend is that governments recover as they get closer to election day. And that is very true. But given just how bad and fractious the current Tory party is, can they actually regain any lead? Again, I don't know, but historically, that does tend to be the case. But like I say, we'll see what happens this year. So, regression analysis of the previous midterms leads do show that a 28% lead tends to result in an 8-point margin of victory on election day. That would put Labour deep in hung parliament territory. And that is one thing, certainly a scenario that could happen, Labour being in a hung parliament. Now, ultimately, I think his best option would be to go with the Liberal Democrats. But of course, would he go with the Liberal Democrats? It's very likely. And of course, it depends how much of a majority he needs to be able to secure that win, and who's going to sort of supply him those extra votes to get over the line. We don't know. We'll have to see. So, the loss of a dozen seats through these boundary changes and voter suppression through ballot ID checks combined to make things even harder. And Labour's lead looks soft. That's very true at the moment. Those ID checks still going to be the first time at this May's local election. We don't know how many people that is going to affect. And bear in mind, as I've said, whenever I've brought this up, there are still people who comment down below in the comments, I didn't realize that was a thing now. I didn't realize I would have to take my ID to the polls. So that is something certainly in the run up to May's local election. And again, if we have a general election, we really have to make sure, because that is, as we've said before, blatant vote suppression. It has been done very specifically to target people who cannot afford these IDs, because guess what? All these IDs that sort of allow people to vote, either A, you have to be over 60 to be able to get one for free, or you have to pay to get one. And then, of course, there's the lead time to some of these IDs. So if you are wanting to vote in the next general election, I would make sure that your ID is ready to go, just in case. So if you do live in the UK, I would make sure you have, or at least make sure that your ID is in place, that you've either got a passport or driving license. That's certainly one of the two that I know, and I think there's some others that you can use as well. I can't remember off the top of my head, but like I say, we'll probably go into that certainly later. But back to it. So in a recent poll conducted for the Win as One campaign, again, that's a very good campaign, actually, by the way, go check them out, which I helped to lead, shows that a 63% of the voters believe that Starmer's current lead is down to the negative views of the government, not positive views of Labour. Again, the injustice of the voting system and the way it skews the political debate should lead Starmer to see that the answer to winning and governing lies in pluralism, alliances, and proportional representation, or PR. First up, FTP, or first past the post, is the toxic glue that holds together a centralized winner-takes-all system. It privileges the interests of the already powerful and a few swing voters in a few swing seats, tilting our politics to the right, whoever wins. PR would weaken the grip of our regressives in the country simply by making every vote count, helping progressives win office and real power. Again, we've talked about this many, many times, and it is very, very true. We do need to move away from that. There was a big progressive majority in 2019, but you wouldn't think it from the result. 16.2 million backed the progressive parties, and only 13.9 million supported the Tories and Brexit parties. But they won an 80-seat majority because they'd formed a pact and didn't split their votes. Again, we've talked about this before about vote splitting, having electoral pacts does work. And as you can see here, under an FTP system, you've got 16.2 million people who are progressive, voting for progressive parties. We are a very progressive country, but unfortunately, this current system we have does not reward having split parties or anything like that. And as I've said, at the next general election, if you want to win, unless there is a proper electoral pact in place, you will have to vote Labour in certainly many cases to certainly guarantee your win, or you will have to make sure and check that there is a pact in place to vote for whichever party you can at least guarantee can win your seat. So back to it. FTP just isn't just unfair. It also forces Labour to the right. Take the issue of immigration. The country is evenly split between those who think it's good and those who think it doesn't. But the positive votes tend to pile up and be wasted in only 25% of seats. So it's little surprise that politicians pander their message to the other 75% of seats. This is what leads us to the stance where Nigel Farage is saying he backs Starmer's stance on immigration. So we have lost before an election is even called. The same dynamic is repeated across the party political agenda. People want climate action and social justice, but the political system works against it. In this way, democracy is our first order of issue for Labour. And unless we change the system, we can't change society. At the launch of Gordon Brown's report on the future of UK democracy, Starmer rightly said, people up and down the country are crying out for a new approach. But the report was strangely silent on PR, given the Labour conference had overwhelmingly backed it as a policy just 2 months before. Labour advocating for it now would encourage mass tactical voting to win and forge an alliance to govern on the big challenges of inequality, climate chaos, housing, and social care. Instead, by fighting on the terrain of elites, swing voters, and the demands of the right-wing media, any Labour victory is a danger of caging itself in. And recent polls show that there is both a majority support for proportional representation of 56% and remarkable backing for progressive parties to work together in government, about 78%, with 71% believing candidates should stand aside for each other to win, just as the right already do. This is the path to victory and a new society. But the Labour machine still refuses to back PR. At best, this represents a very outdated, technocratic, and persistent culture seeking to do politics to people. At worst, its twisted goal is to retain a monopoly of opposition by stopping other parties and new entrants competing fairly. But guaranteed second place or occasional periods in office on the Tory terrain are no longer good enough. This is again very true. In his campaign to win the Labour leadership, Starmer backed the case for voting reform. Now it seems he needs a nudge. Again, very true. I think that's very, very good to do. And I think we should absolutely make sure that we are nudging Starmer. Thus it ever was, that real power is never given away. It is waged and won by combining morality with force. We can look for inspiration to the Scottish Parliament, and only realised through a huge civic campaign. And because we know that in 1997 Labour promised voting reform but refused to deliver on it, and the case for change through citizens' pressure must be maintained when whatever the election result. Again, very true. This is the thing that we've talked about. These types of campaign, be it for changing for PR the voting system, or even trying to change the House of Lords, massively important. We have to keep on pushing it. We have to keep it in people's mind that this is going to be a good thing. You have to keep these campaigns going, and it does unfortunately take time. But like I say, this type of change I think is worth doing and is worth obviously fighting for. So the polls are likely too close. Starmer, his party, and candidates will want as much support as possible. The condition must be their backing for real democratic reform. They can be bent to better policies. These are not normal times, and policies as normal will not do. So I am optimistic. I am not going to lie. I think changing the House of Lords is a fantastic step forward, and I think it is possible. I think that you've done this once, voting for PR. Well, guess what? Do it at the next Labour conference. Do it at the one after that. Just keep on doing it again and again and again. Make the party listen. Start to go after Labour MPs. Say, hey, you need to stop supporting PR. When it comes to candidate selection, make sure that you're voting for candidates who support PR. Make it very clear at your local Labour Party meetings, or when it comes to these candidate selections, that your party may not vote for a candidate at all if they don't support PR. And make it very clear that they should support PR. Put those people in power. That's what we're going to start really doing and start focusing on, because we are seeing this build. We are seeing this build. And just as it said there, you've got more people now supporting the voting change. That will build, because people are really starting to see that our current voting system is not fit for purpose anymore. And I think certainly if by some miracle the Tories manage to hang on, and it is because of changes to the voting system, or even again the voter ID laws that stop thousands of people from voting, then there will be a massive outcry. And I think this becomes more and more of a time to push forward for proportional representation and to change the voting system for the better. So, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club as well, which you can join as well. And of course, please do remember to ring the bell so you get to see videos when we go live or when we drop a new one on the channel. And of course, as always, guys, thank you very much for your support. And of course, we'll see you all next time.